Ladies and gentlemen, if this is the warm-up for night 2, then I cannot wait, because night 1 of Stand and Deliver was amazing. Everything from bell to bell was outstanding. And of course, I gotta dive into it. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I have Kevin Jones, Disciples of Wrestling, and let's get started. So to start off this takeover special, we get a nice guitar solo of the national anthem. Now this is pretty cool because I like to see how Triple H really gets creative when it comes to these live performances for all these takeovers. And this, just like the title says, it delivers. Now to start off the special, our first match is Kushida versus Pete Dunne. Yes, please. We actually see these two start off fast and furious, where they go trading submissions back and forth already. We see Pete Dunne go right away, go for the triangle choke, and then we see Kushida reverse that into the cross arm breaker. These two go back and forth until we see Kushida try to go for the springboard elbow, back elbow. But we end up seeing Pete Dunne sweep his arms from under the ropes. And then we see Pete Dunne hit a nice throwing suplex onto the apron, and he goes right after the digits. You already know what it is. So we end up seeing these two go dead even in the ring until Kushida takes over when they go to the outside on the entranceway, when he finally hits the springboard back elbow. And then while Pete Dunne is at the top of the entrance, we see Kushida run all the way up to hit Pete Dunne with the kick. Actually, this was reversed. So it was Kushida running from the entranceway onto by ringside, kicking Pete Dunne into the ring. Now we end up seeing these two just getting up and going shot for shot. Boy, I loved every bit of this. This was very technical to start off. Now this was the part when they got nitty gritty. They start punching each other, chopping each other until these two both collapse. Now we end up seeing Pete Dunne try to go for the bitter end, but Kushida reverses it into a nice brain buster roll up for a near fall. Now these two end up eventually working their way up to the top rope somehow, but we end up seeing Kushida lock in the hoverboard from up top, and he rolls Pete Dunne onto the mat to where Pete Dunne ends up rope breaking. Now this ends up happening on 4 different occasions after this, where Kushida goes for the hoverboard lock, and all 4 times Pete Dunne makes it to the ropes. Now once Pete Dunne actually gets out of this, we actually see him reverse Kushida and then ends up stomping onto the hands again. He does this twice, going into the bitter end for the win. Next up, we have the Gauntlet Eliminator for the #1 contendership for the North American title. Now to start off, we actually have Leon Ruff and Isaiah Swerve Scott. They're actually fighting each other before this match even starts. These two are fighting each other. Then the bell finally rings, and we see Swerve end up taking control when he has Leon Ruff draped over the barricade and hits a nice running drop kick. Then when we get to the commentary area, we actually see Leon Ruff hit a nice twisting cutter onto Scott. Then we see these two work their way back in the ring, and these two are dead even. Honestly, I couldn't even tell you who was in control, but right before the countdown, we actually see Isaiah Swerve Scott get reversed into Leon Ruff hitting a nice Hurricane Rana from the top rope. And coming out number 3 is the thick boy. Yes, Mr. Bronson Reed. He comes out and he's dominating. He literally, these two didn't have a chance against this man. He sits on Leon Ruff twice, and then he double German suplexes both of these guys. And while he's waiting, out comes Cameron Grimes. So Cameron Grimes comes out, and early on, we actually see, while Cameron Grimes is making his entrance, we see Isaiah Swerve Scott come back up, and these two start to double team Reed. Now, during the midst of this, we actually see Grimes end up paying Swerve Scott to work together throughout the rest of the match, and that's exactly what they did for the most part. We actually see these two just neutralize Bronson Reed to the outside and just work Leon Ruff. When I say work Leon Ruff couldn't stand a chance against these two. And they did this all up until this man, Dexter Loomis, comes out. And of course, while Dexter Lumis is making his entrance, we actually see Isaiah Swerve Scott pin Leon Ruff, and Leon Ruff is now eliminated. Now, while Dexter Lumis is also making his entrance, he takes Bronson Reed while he's by the entranceway, and he DDTs the Thick Boy. Now we get into the ring, and you see Isaiah Swerve Scott and Cameron Grimes think they got this thing worked out because it's 2-on-1. You mean it usually works out. I guess they didn't pay attention to that Johnny Gargano feud. That numbers thing don't matter to Dexter Lumis, as he just works these two, and then we actually see everyone get involved eventually, and eventually everyone gets wiped out, all up until L.A. Knight comes out. And he comes out and he's talking trash. Trash. And he talks trash throughout the entire entrance, all up until Bronson Reed grabs my boy by the neck and throws him into the ring. Then we see Reed just take control for a little while, all up until L.A. Knight is able to get out of the way of a corner splash and hit a nice back neck breaker on Mr. Bronson Reed. Then we actually see L.A. Knight hit a nice little, I don't know what this was. It was like a exploder suplex with a gut wrench little variation. It was nice. I liked it. He hit that on my boy, I think Isaiah Swerve Scott it was. Or it was Cameron Grimes. Yeah, he took him to the moon. And then we actually see in one leap, L.A. Knight get to the top rope to meet Isaiah Swerve Scott. And then just take him out too. And L.A. Knight is feeling himself until he's face-to-face with Dexter Lumis. As they're face-to-face, we actually see Cameron Grimes try to get involved again. And of course, Dexter Lumis sees us coming, and he tries to put Grimes to sleep. But Dexter Lumis gets pinned by L.A. Knight. And he's now eliminated. He's worked up. I mean, it's hard to say he's worked up when he don't have emotion on his face. And he just moved to the outside all up until the last other three members of this match end up triple teaming LA Knight, and then he gets eliminated right away. And then we actually see, while he's getting put out of the ring, we see LA Knight get put to sleep by Dexter Lumis on the outside. But now it's down to the last three. The Thick Boy, Bronson Reed, Cameron Grimes, and of course, Isaiah Swerve Scott. And while we're in the midst of this, we actually see these guys trade blows. Yeah, this teamwork thing ain't going out the window now. Now they're trading blows, and of course, all three of these men end up collapsing. But Cameron Grimes, the smart guy, you know, that investing thing paid off. He remembered he paid Isaiah Swerve Scott. So they start double teaming Bronson Reed again. But of course, the Thick Boy's getting fired up. But eventually, the numbers, of course, kick in like usual. He fights off Isaiah Swerve Scott. But of course, Mr. Cameron Grimes ends up hitting that nice reversed body splash. And of course, right when he was supposed to be pinning the Thick Boy, we end up seeing Isaiah Swerve Scott and him trading roll-ups where they both got a handful of tights. But it was Isaiah Swerve Scott that got the handful of tights that wasn't seen, and Cameron Grimes was eliminated. Now we're down to the final two. We're down to the Thick Boy and Isaiah Swerve Scott. And these two are going back and forth. Isaiah actually at one point, when Reed was thinking about hitting the tsunami splash, he actually pushes the Thick Boy out of the ring and hits a nice power slam onto the apron. And now these two are back in the ring, and we see Isaiah Swerve Scott go for the house call 3 times to a near fall. But the Thick Boy ends up flattening this man out on like a flapjack twice with 2 big moves. And then the tsunami splash for the win. And then we see, of course, on the entranceway, Johnny G coming out. And these two are face to face. Now, our third match of the night is for the NXT UK Championship. And it is Walter versus Tommaso Ciampa. And Ciampa's back, boy. Ciampa shaved the head, got rid of the tights. The trunks are back. We are now back to Psycho Magic. Boy, and he's ripped, boy. That is a ripped man. And these two get physical early. Ciampa even slaps Mr. Walter in the face, gets him on the mat. But as he's starting to build up momentum, getting himself off of the ropes, we actually see Walter get back up and chops this man out his boots. He chops him twice and then shoves him out of the ring. And then while they're in their kerfuffle outside the ring, we actually see Walter go for a chop, and literally he misses the chop, but he slices through the top of the commentary table. Slice right through it to the point where half the logo gets taken off. And then this actually sets up Walter with a hand injury for the rest of the match, actually, to where he has to out wrestle Ciampa now. There's no more chopping. And he does that for the most part, I'm not going to lie. He bullies Ciampa to a point, but Ciampa ends up working his way back, and he goes to chomp this man down with numerous clotheslines. He hits clotheslines for about 2 minutes. Then we see Walter hit a nice knife-edge chop again, but he's fired up. Ciampa's fired up. He finally takes him down with a clothesline and hits the white noise for a near fall. Now these guys, we actually see Tommaso go for the Widow's Bell, and he's got it in. He's not letting go. Walter ends up laying on him to end up getting the near fall, but Ciampa still hasn't let go of the Widow's Bell yet. He finally hits it, and he gets a near fall. Now these two are back up. We actually see these two go head-to-head once again. And we're actually getting to the point where we actually see Walter hit a nice German suplex and a clothesline for a near fall. These guys are back at it. We see these guys go head-to-head again. But Ciampa, of course, is going after the hand while Walter's starting to go after the injured neck of Ciampa. So we actually see, while they're doing that, Walter ends up working his way up to the top rope, and Ciampa meets him there for a white noise from the second rope, once again for a near fall. Now Walter ends up working his way back up. I'm excited. And then we actually see Walter hit 2 power bombs for near falls. But Ciampa said he's not done, but Walter isn't either, as he hits a huge dragon suplex and a knife-edge chop for the win. Walter successfully retains and continues his over 2-year reign of the NXT UK Championship. Now next up, we have the triple threat tag team match to crown the vacant NXT Tag Team Champions. And we have MSK versus the Grizzled Young Veterans versus Legado del Fantasma. And starting off, it was very entertaining as all of these teams had their own little spot of teamwork starting off. But we actually see James Drake of the Grizzled Young Veterans end up taking control of Mr. Carter of MSK. And we're seeing the Grizzled Young Veterans actually keep Legado del Fantasma out of the match for the most part. Now, as of course they're getting in control, we actually see Wes Lee end up quickening up the pace as MSK runs wild. But Legado is back in the match, and they wipe out both teams. And they start to use their numbers advantage as a very, very key part of their offense during this part of the match, where they start wanting out each member of each team. Now, once the pace ends up getting slowed down again, of course, Wesley gets tagged in again. And this time he runs wild. He takes out everybody. And he runs wild. We actually see GYV and Legado both try to get an offense, but they can't stop my boy. Now, this ends up happening to a point where it comes to a stop when GYV ends up trapping Lee's hand, and they go right after the injured hand that they targeted weeks ago. And while they're targeting this hand, we actually see Gibson go for a hand lock, trapping this man's hand. And even while Nash Carter is getting locked in another submission, looks like an STF variation from James Drake, he stops Wesley from tapping out. And then, of course, Legado's back. They wipe out the teams once again, and they hit their finisher, which is the assisted, looks like an enziguri kick into the Russian leg sweep for a near fall. But eventually we see GYV and MSK get tired of Legado. We see Gibson and Drake end up hitting the Doomsday Device on the outside of the ring on Joaquin Wilde. And we see MSK hit one of their finishes on the other side of the outside of the ring on Mendoza. And then we're down to these two teams, MSK and GYV, the two teams that were in the finals of the Dusty Cup. And they get physical, boy. But this gets physical all up until things fall apart when MSK hits their nice finisher of the assisted neck breaker for the win, and your new NXT Tag Team Champions RMSK. And now for your main event. It is for the NXT Women's Championship, and it is Io Shirai versus Raquel Gonzalez. There was no time wasted as these two actually go after each other. Io hops right on Raquel, but Raquel dominates. And she dominates and dominates all up until Io actually ends up going to the top rope and hitting a nice Hurricane Rana, sending Raquel all the way over to the corner where she chops her down all the way to her where she's on her butt. And then, of course, we see Io trying to go for a signature corner drop kick, but she gets caught. She gets caught by Raquel, and Raquel throws her over the ropes. But we see Io end up setting up Raquel for a nice tope suicida. And while, of course, she's looking to hit another top rope move from the outside, we see Dakota Guy get involved, and then she gets ejected from the match. But it comes to Raquel's benefit when she hits a long dart on Io Shirai onto the ring post. Now these two get physical in the ring, where Raquel Gonzalez is really owning this for the most part with big moves and really slowing down the pace. She hits the gory special submission, but Io ends up getting out of this with a nice Hurricane Rana into the nice double stomp. She hits a 619 to a missile drop kick, and then she ends up hitting the co-red still for a near fall. Now, we actually see Raquel try to go for her finish, but we end up seeing Io reversing this for a crossface submission where Raquel gets to the ropes. Now this thing goes to the outside when Raquel rolls out, and we see Io hit her signature moonsault on Raquel on the entranceway. We see Raquel work her way to the top of the ramp, and then we actually see Io run her way down to a double knee strike. And while Raquel's getting back up, we see Io dive from the NXT skull on the entrance onto Raquel Gonzalez. The skull is 20 feet high, and that's where Io dropped off of. Now she drags Raquel back to the ring, and she hits her moonsault, boy. We think it's all over, but Raquel kicks out. Yes, Raquel Gonzalez kicks out, and as these two are both getting up, Raquel's yelling at Io, and it's like, why won't you just learn? And she hits a huge clothesline and hits the one-arm powerbomb, and now we have a new NXT Women's Champion, and it is Raquel Gonzalez. Now, like I said at the beginning, if this is the warm-up, night 2 about to be a banger. Yes, this was an amazing night 1. It couldn't have gone better. Phenomenal pace matches. Everyone got time, and it was only 5 matches. WrestleMania, what you gonna do about this? Because these guys did exactly what this name said. They stand and deliver. So you know what time it is. Night 2. It is getting reviewed by Jordan. So I'll be back with you guys on our watch along. Yes, our watch along for the WrestleMania Night 1 and Night 2. But, of course, pay attention to our predictions, as all 3 of us are going to be locking in our predictions for WrestleMania. But until next time, I'm Kevin Jones, the Disciples of Wrestling, and that was wrestling.